What are some interesting psychology facts, tricks, or secrets you know? Story 1. Enter the realm of psychology. Here are a few ways to get someone to agree to what you're asking. In response to your question, nod. Mirror neurons in our brains activate when we see another person's behavior and cause us to imitate it. Additionally, kids may begin to nod in agreement with you after a while. The section on mirror neurons was covered in my psychology class, and the section on nodding was covered in my sales job. Wow, that's serious. Begin by requesting minor favors in advance if you have a larger one to ask. I think this is known as the foot in the door phenomena. Instead of asking for a massive favor at the outset, it's more effective to ask for smaller ones and build up to larger ones. This increases the likelihood that people will say yes. On the flip side, if you want to initiate a large favor but are still expecting a negative response, ask for a large favor first. Afterwards, request the smaller one when they decline. If they were slightly embarrassed to decline the initial request, they are more inclined to say yes. Story 2. Although it is more of a strategy than a trick, the fact that everyone is aware of it reveals something about how easily our minds can be manipulated. Someone will always believe what you say if you say it with conviction, a straight face, and a loud voice. There are several instances where I've informed someone something that is obviously wrong, but they still persist in believing it to be real. My memory serves me well of the day when someone insisted that former British Prime Leader John Major had left his position to take up vocal duties with REM. I said it with such conviction and a deadpan expression on my face, and I'm not backing down, even though it's obviously stupid. They were aware it was crazy, but they began to question their own sanity. Story 3. People tend to choose giving rather than receiving because they have a propensity towards reciprocating behavior. To make up for this, it's a good idea to consistently contribute 10% more than you anticipate receiving. A little unexpected present or an honest comment might go a long way towards encouraging someone to lend you a hand. However, be careful not to overdo it, since it will become apparent very fast. Fields of study about which most people know very little often have their complexity undervalued. This leads those with less knowledge to exaggerate their abilities, while those with more experience tend to understate theirs, the Dunning-Kruger effect. When interviewing for a job, this becomes immediately apparent. After having applicants rate their level of expertise, you can put them through a test of their knowledge with a set of questions. In my experience, non-experts who provide reliable estimations are rare. Instead of trying to sell flowers, grocery retailers place the fresh flower section by the entrance to prime customers. Stores often place their fruit and deli sections next to their flower sections, so customers may get a sense of the exquisite freshness of such items before they even step foot in the store. Depending on the person in charge of the setup, these concepts may also inform the design of the end caps, or the items found at the ends of the aisles. Things that are close by often have connections, even if they don't seem to be related at first glance. This isn't exactly a trick, but it is an effort to maximize your purchases. Story 4. The folks I consider temporary friends are the ones with whom I'm most likely to be open and honest. I find that this works against me in relationships since my insecurity of being alone causes me to be less forthcoming with my true feelings and more focused on gaining the other person's approval. Sometimes you have to be ready to let someone go if you wish to retain them. Those who remain are known as keepers. This helps to clarify why I am so forthcoming with details on the internet. You shouldn't be so harsh on yourself because you're aware of the pitfalls that your actions can lead you to. The very first thing you need to do is recognize what needs changing. Getting that far can be a long process for some people. This is a really reasonable and sincere assessment. It seems counterintuitive, but being totally authentic happens when you believe someone is only passing through your life. Yet, the fear of losing someone you care about can cause you to isolate yourself or screen your emotions, which in turn makes them feel unwanted. Story 5. Poker body language. These examples are from Texas Hold'em, but they work for any poker game. Someone is weak if they put on an act of strength. Leaning forward and hurling chips at the pot indicates a player without a hand. The reason he wants you to fold is clear. It doesn't matter what you're holding. If they stare at you without blinking, you should raise the bastards back. If someone is slumped over the TV, it's because they're holding a solid hand and don't want you to fold. They're hoping you'll call. Be wary if a player checks their hand to see what they have before taking a card that could complete a straight or flush. The score remained tied. Still, they didn't get the hand they were drawing if they gambled right away. They have likely succeeded if they do not wager. For example, if a player who always neatly stacks their chips wins a pot and then stops doing so in order to play the next hand, it's likely that they have excellent hole cards that should be played. It would not shock you if they carry AA, Alaska, or similar. Act appropriately. Someone is obviously here to gamble if they smash money on the table, shout chip, or wave money throughout the room. Take it easy on the ball. They will likely play tight if they timidly take money out of their wallet and give it to the dealer. This one is spot on since the individuals it's aimed at haven't started behaving like poker players just yet. They are still thinking about it as buying chips, not playing. Therefore, you can see the real me. Be cautious with this advice. Because it is well known in the poker community, you can encounter seasoned players who operate in direct opposition to it, particularly if they believe you're following it. As usual, it's on you if you fail to identify the naive player within the first half an hour of playing. The term chips is more often used, while I'm aware that checks is the term used by professional players. Story 6. Even though I know it's my job to dismiss someone, I always enter the room with the intention of giving them an opportunity to show why they shouldn't be let go. In rare cases, it helps them out, but usually it doesn't. Finally, I'm able to get through to them, and it's only after I'm sure they can't handle working for me anymore that I let them go. While still giving them the benefit of the doubt, this method makes firing people much simpler, in my experience. Story 7. Psychologist by training. Move your body at an angle to divert someone's attention from what they're saying. This will create an invisible barrier between you two. They may not be able to identify it, but they will certainly feel uneasy and cease their actions in response. Turn your body only a quarter of a circle. Cross your legs and allow your torso follow, so that you are not directly facing them. Conversely, mirroring someone's body language is a great way to show that you're paying close attention to what they're saying. When they recline, you do the same. If they make hand gestures, lift your hand up approximately 2 inches and release it. Their smile makes you smile too. Continuating from this, leaning back with your feet out, keeping your arms and legs uncrossed, and maintaining this posture will make you seem more open to accepting communication, which in turn attracts more individuals. Keep your distance of about 3 feet, speak with your chin slightly lowered, and face the person directly on if you want to suck them up. Smiling subtly conveys kindness and surrender. Inadvertently showing aggressiveness is possible when you get too near to someone, less than 2 feet. When you outstrip the other person in height, this tactic really shines. Just 7% of communication is conveyed through words alone. The remainder is conveyed by nonverbal cues and word stress. Story 8 priming is something that has always fascinated me. Priming, a sort of subconscious psychological manipulation involving extremely minimal stimuli, makes it possible for an effect to emerge from a sample of information. This is a bit difficult to explain without examples. For instance, when shown phrases related to aging, wrinkle, etc., a group of people in the experiment walks significantly more slowly than the control group. On the other hand, your performance on a test could be influenced by your perception of its nature, whether it's a quiz or an actual exam. Read up on the topic in the Wikipedia article. If you're interested in watching some related videos, just type priming into YouTube. Also, look at journal databases if you have the chance. Story 10. Probably said before, but all I know is that it's easy to make up strange hobbies. Just imagine a room full of hot men and women together with a beach ball. Once they do it a few times, they'll both start to expect the presence of a beach ball in the room. Once the beach ball is involved, it becomes challenging for them to be in the mood apart. Even though Pavlovian training is a kind of classical conditioning, it's fascinating how it can turn something as strange or boring as a need. Story 11. The leading leg of a crossed leg gesture should be pointing towards you to indicate that the other person is paying close attention to what you have to say. Words have power as well. For instance, you've just started breathing on your own. You have just become cognizant of the fact that your clothing are physically touching your skin. There is no ideal spot in your mouth for your tongue. You feel self-conscious about your feet's position presently. It would take too much space to list them all, but there are more. Story 12. Benjamin Franklin supposedly said that if you're angry with someone, go ask them to borrow something. This advice has had an impact known as the Benjamin Franklin effect. The idea is that if the person agreed to the loan, it would create a conflict between their unpleasant feelings and the act of doing you a favor, which is why it should be something you genuinely care about, though I doubt this is necessary. Negative emotions, which are just psychological illusions, eventually fade away as a result of the positive influence of reality. Story 13. We tend to exaggerate our own explanations for observable behaviors while ignoring situational reasons, a phenomenon known as the fundamental attribution error. Our assumptions about other drivers are a prime illustration of this, since they are both prevalent and easily observable. We tend to assume the worst when someone cuts us off, even if there are many more reasonable explanations, such as not noticing us, being in the middle of an emergency, or simply not paying attention. Story 14. This may or may not be a psychological issue. We need each other to survive. Understanding how other people's faces convey meaning is a crucial skill. Because of this, when you focus on a face, your brain ignores any movement of the head. I mean, you can't see a person's head going up and down and side to side as they move towards you. Inverting yourself allows you to unfilter the head movement. The filter will no longer function since the face you're seeing will be upside down. As a result, seems to require a properly oriented face to activate. So find a spot where you may turn yourself upside down and observe anyone approaching you. Surprisingly, there is more head movement than you expect. Story 15. Reaction formation is something that has always made me laugh. It's the practice of acting in opposition to your emotions, as expressing them is considered forbidden. Take the case of a tiny boy whose inappropriate behavior involves tugging on a girl's hair. It's just not cool to fancy a girl when you're that young. One entertaining tactic is to inquire of homophobes whether their bigotry stems from a desire to conceal their true feelings for men from society. While it does occur occasionally, I primarily use it as a means to annoy people when they are being bothersome. As a defense mechanism, reaction creation is intriguing because it demonstrates how extreme our actions can get when we attempt to bury emotions we believe we shouldn't feel. Behaving in the inverse manner serves as a protective barrier. Story 16. Make an effort to be still and nonverbal for a few minutes while you're in the middle of a session. Take note of the customer's nonverbal cues. Avoid wasting time on a repeat customer by explaining that you're sick of hearing about their problems and would rather focus on helping others with more recent troubles. Inform them that, despite paying for an hour-long session, the sessions are actually quite brief. Inform them that you will be covering just one topic today. What are you going to do about it, and can you do anything? Use the stop sign trick for OCD, ADD, ADHD, and anxiety. When you need to stop your behavior, visualize a stop sign. This will at least give the client an opportunity to think about what they are about to do or do, as we all know what an octagon red stop sign looks like. Story 17. Specialist in human factors this place. Among all the psychological facts that I am familiar with, this one I take great pleasure in sharing with others. One example of solipsistic introjection is the tendency to project one's own voice onto text when reading it. As a result, you are more likely to understand and internalize the message, since you are less likely to deceive yourself. To alleviate the cognitive dissonance, you may vent your frustrations at the writer more than when you're in person, especially if the piece contains information that you strongly disagree with. Story 18. A neurotransmitter known as norepinephrine is released into the bloodstream when an individual challenges your viewpoint during an argument. In a survival scenario, the same chemical is released, physically causing narrow-mindedness and irrational reasoning. Even if you possess the strength of the human psyche and are able to conquer these emotions, you nevertheless go a little primal. So, arguments between inebriated men lead to more stupid problems, like fights, because the men physically become even more closed-minded and illogical. Story 19. People who have trouble seeing are affected by Charles Bonnet syndrome. Objects or memories from the past will be used by the brain to fill in the blanks. A patient was seen to me last week. The contents of the wardrobe from 50 years ago were neatly packed when she opened it. She had her doubts, though. For fear of ridicule, many elderly persons keep quiet about their feelings of being insane. Their pain goes unnoticed. I reassured her that she was not going crazy and that she should focus on something else or simply try to relax and take it all in, like watching a movie. After a miraculous cure sent her into a frenzy, she stormed out of the office, accompanied by her personal movie theater. Story 20. When something you've just noticed, experienced, or heard about keeps coming up, it's called the Botter-Minehoff phenomenon, which is also called the frequency illusion or the recency illusion. As if out of nowhere, the topic has become a hot topic among practically everyone and their cousin. Just because you're paying more attention to it doesn't mean you're actually seeing it more. For instance, you've just become an expert on a particular make and model of car, and suddenly you can't help but notice that model whenever you're out and about. An interesting anomaly in human cognition is the Botter-Minehoff phenomenon. On first encounter, it seems almost otherworldly, as if the cosmos were suddenly teeming with signs and patterns. But in reality, it's just your brain tuning into something it has previously ignored. That vehicle is a model of perfection. It can be completely unnoticeable one minute and completely ubiquitous the next. You are the only one who has noticed a shift in the world around you. It serves as a stark reminder of how heavily filtered reality is. Even if it has always been there, whatever you focus on now seems much more prominent. Story 21, the attribution theory, is one of my favorites. According to it, we tend to blame external factors, like the teacher's dislike of me, for our failures, and internal factors, like how hard I studied, for our achievements. Success or failure in any given event can have both internal and external causes, but it's fascinating to observe this pattern in action in so many different contexts. As it relates to sociology, for instance, the meritocracy myth, it becomes much more intriguing. Without taking advantage of any biases or privileges, I was able to earn that scholarship, that great job, that promotion, etc. Those folks who didn't. Story 22. This is a former psychology major, thus, everything related to the field is fair game, but in any case, here are some interesting anecdotes. Incredible problem solvers, ravens are. Video footage has surfaced showing them dropping hard nuts from high above busy highways, which drivers subsequently smash open. Once the traffic light stops, they retrieve the nuts. Putting a reward at the bottom of a narrow tube and filling it with water causes it to rise to the top. This is a concept that both chimps and ravens are familiar with. Kids under the age of 5 have a hard time with this, and kids between the ages of 5 and 7 need some time to figure it out. Little ones lack conservation, the ability to recognize that an amount stays the same regardless of the size of its container. For some reason, kids always associate length with quantity, regardless of whether the glass is shorter or taller. The shape of many cereal boxes aimed at children is not coincidence. When people experience cognitive dissonance, the discomfort of holding views that are at odds with one another, they may try to alleviate this discomfort by engaging in dissonance reduction strategies, such as making changes to their beliefs or actions. When exposed to messages about the health risks of smoking, a smoker may take one of the several actions: stop smoking, rationalize their smoking, I earned it or I exercise, ignore the warnings, my grandma smoked for 60 years, or switch to a healthier brand of cigarettes. Story 23. Not a psychologist, but seriously surprising. The Alice in Wonderland syndrome. Alice in Wonderland syndrome, sometimes called the Todd syndrome, is characterized by a warped perception of one's immediate environment. A person with Alice in Wonderland syndrome may experience hallucinations such as hearing sounds that are too faint or too loud, seeing objects that are either too big or too little, and even losing track of time or textures, much like Alice who outgrows her house. Even your own body image can be distorted by this illness, which has been compared to an LSD experience without the bliss. Thankfully, Alice in Wonderland syndrome is quite uncommon. It typically strikes teenagers with a history of drug use or a brain tumor. Story 24. One method by which visual cues might affect auditory perception is known as the Mgherk Effect. We pick up on a related sound when we observe a cue, even if the cue isn't quite accurate. When watching a video with subtitles that aren't accurate but sound comparable, it can take a little longer to understand the words on screen. Or you might not even notice there's a difference. The works of Oliver Sacks provide some very fascinating examples. A lot of those are caused by damage to the brain. Apparently, a guy who suddenly couldn't tell one item from another famously mistook his wife's head for a hat. Another person could only see in grayscale after suffering a complete loss of color vision in a vehicle accident. Everything, even his memories, had been wiped clean. As the Mgherk Effect so clearly demonstrates, Our senses are incredibly delicate and susceptible to manipulation. Although it may seem like hearing and seeing are distinct functions, in reality, the brain is always combining the two, with vision often coming out on top. You also provided some really remarkable instances from Oliver Sacks. The reliance of our entire reality on the circuitry of the brain is demonstrated by them. You could be staring at a hat instead of a person, or your whole world could become monochrome, even in your memory, due to a single mishap. If our perception is so easily tricked, then how much of our everyday experience is actually our brain's best estimate piecing together? Story 25, I wanted to mention that I've been staying up late reading and researching all of the responses since I absolutely adore them. Does anyone have any idea why this happened? My building architecture student buddy paused what she was doing to stare up at a school building, and soon after, everyone else did the same. What is the exact reason behind this? Please let me know if you have any information in the fields of sociology or psychology. Story 26. That when the imagination and conscious will are in conflict, the imagination invariably gains the day is Kuh's law of reversed effort. Or, to put it more simply, you still thought about pink elephants after I warned you not to. A tightrope walker falling, again, simply by instructing them not to, is my favorite example. As a biology teacher, I like this one because it was something I brought up in class approximately 25 years ago. From time to time, for a long time, a former student would run into me online or at a random event and bring up the pink elephant I warned them not to think about in 1997.